Good evening, councilors. I call to order the special meeting of the City Council this evening, Tuesday, December 10th. Public participation to this meeting is provided remotely and in person in accordance with Mass General Law. The Zoom link for participation can be found on the city website. This meeting is also being televised by Peabody TV and recorded by the City Council stenographer. The first thing on our agenda is the tax classification hearing, and the clerk will read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday evening, December 10th, 2024, at 6:00 p.m. in the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., and remotely via Zoom in accordance with Chapter 797 of the Acts of 1979, as amended, of the Massachusetts General Laws, in order to adopt the percentages of the local tax levy to be borne by each class of real and personal property for fiscal year 2025. For remote participation using the Zoom platform, please visit www.pbd-ma.gov under Calendar on the homepage or contact the City Clerk's office. Peabody City Council, Councilor Stephanie R. Peach, City Council President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we go to the mayor, just for some administrative things, go to Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Just three quick ones. Move to receive item A, so moved. A has never been received, B has never been received. So I'm going to move to receive those two items.
Councilors, you heard the motion to receive item A. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to receive item B.
Councilors, you heard the motion on item B. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to receive late item 1. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion on late 1. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn.
That's it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor. At this time, I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Council. Good evening. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm very pleased here to be here tonight to discuss the state of our city's finances and to propose our 2025 tax rate classification. This is certainly a very busy time of year for our finance team, and I want to thank Mike Gingras, Mary Martin, Sue Antonellis, and Leslie George and their office staffs for their hard work in preparing for tonight's presentation. Mike Gingras will provide a more detailed presentation to you. However, I did want to provide you with a brief overview. Tonight, I'm here to report on the continued strength of our city's finances. You may recall this past June at our budget presentation, we listed a bunch of scenarios in terms of the potential tax rate with a median of about $398 tax increase to our average residential tax bill. As always, this projection was based on the best information we had at the time and included a number of factors. And I think this will be a number of items that you remember from our June budget meeting. We have a nearly 10% increase to our city's health insurance obligation, totaling approximately $2 million increase, which translates to about an $80 tax increase for the average residential taxpayer. This is the largest year-over-year increase to health insurance that we've seen since I became mayor, and probably for many years before that. And unfortunately, we have been told by our consultant that we should expect double-digit increases for the foreseeable future. And obviously, this is of grave concern and not sustainable for an operational city budget. In addition, we were just notified within the last few weeks that there's an 18% increase for our retiree health insurance, and this was not quite expected. We have a nearly 4% increase to our pension obligation, which totaled nearly $14 million this fiscal year. And you may recall a nearly $700,000 increase to our Essex Tech assessment. Now, these are non-discretionary costs that just have to be paid as a matter of doing business, and the escalations continue to concern me and concern all of us as we move forward year to year. But despite these rising costs, you and I continue to work together to improve our city and to make Peabody a more desirable place to live, work, start a business, and raise a family. Together, we have invested in education, including a complete renovation of the Welch School. As you know, this project included a new HVAC system, new windows, new furnishing, the very latest equipment and technology, and a reconfiguration of their educational space. The renovation has transformed the building into a full-year facility for educational and community use, which will continue to serve Peabody families for the next 50 years, hopefully more. Also, together, we have invested in public safety, including nearly $70 million for Peabody's new police and public safety headquarters. This state-of-the-art complex will serve as the administrative headquarters for the Peabody Police Department, the Peabody Fire Department, and Emergency Management Services. And those are just a couple of highlights of the many projects we have undertaken together to improve our community. Since those June projections, Peabody's economy, particularly our housing market and commercial sector, have continued to thrive. As a result, I am proposing a slightly lower average residential tax increase of $386, down from the $398 median projection we made in June. Our average residential home value has increased again this year by nearly 6% to $615,000, certainly the highest on record in Peabody's history. Homes for sale in Peabody continue to come off the market quickly and often well over asking price. Of course, our entire region has seen housing market gains over the past decade, but make no mistake, our investment in Peabody's future continues to pay dividends by making our city among the most desirable places to live in Massachusetts, and again among the hottest real estate markets in the entire country. Residential and commercial growth continue to generate over $1.1 million in new tax dollars, which is consistent with our 10-year average of $1.2 million in annual new growth. This is a key statistic that I don't believe many other cities and towns can boast about. Our new growth this year was fairly balanced, with $582,000 in new tax dollars coming from residential and $521,000 from the commercial sector. Additionally, I am proposing a $1 million draw from our reserves earlier this year. I had considered a $1.5 million drawdown from our reserves. However, I feel that $1 million is the more prudent amount as we look ahead to next year and making up for the absence of ARPA funds. I'm very pleased with how we handled the ARPA funds over the last few years as a community. I think we did things the right way by gradually reducing our reliance on ARPA. You may recall a few years ago when COVID first hit, we used $4.5 million, the following year $3.5 million, the following year $2.5 million, and then this year $1.1 million. And the reason I wanted to move forward and proposing to move forward with just a $1 million draw, that will just make the funding gap less for us next year because we will not have ARPA anymore to rely on. So we will be reducing our funding gap to about $500,000, $600,000, which I think puts us in good position compared to many other cities and towns who have a funding gap. Despite ever-rising costs, our investment in education and public safety and our ongoing commitment to delivering the municipal services that residents expect will still boast among the very lowest residential tax bills of any city or town in Essex County, and among the very lowest in all of the state of Massachusetts. Never easy to vote tonight on the tax classification, but I truly believe that we are investing appropriately and conscientiously in Peabody's future. In closing, I want to thank all of you as city councilors for being outstanding partners with my administration, and again to our finance team for the terrific work they do for us on a daily basis. I'm going to turn over to Mr. Gingras. We have Mary Martin, our city auditor, as well as Sue Antonellis and Leslie George from our assessor's office, and certainly myself, happy to answer any questions as we move forward. But thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you, councilors. We're going to begin by going through a financial overview, first with the general operating budget and then with the enterprise funds. The top portion of this slide shows our sources of revenue for FY 2024. We came in with $120 million in property taxes, prior year property taxes at $889. Local receipts at $22.6, state aid at $45.9. Other sources of revenue combined: health trust, parking meter, Brooks B. Tilley's, George Peabody House. Facilities and cable and museum fees totaled $2.7 million. And then we used ARPA funds not only for the budget, but to supplement the overtime costs in public safety at $3.25 million, for total revenues of $195 million, $195.9 million. And we expended the original budget below at $181.9. We had supplemental increases for salaries at $1.9 million. Our obligation for North Shore Essex Tech at $5.2 million. Our state and county assessments at $5.1. And then other amounts to be raised, which were included abatements and an amount raised to cover a deficit in the water and sewer enterprise from last year. That totaled $195,399. So we ended up in the positive note, revenues greater than expenses of $592,000, which was added to our beginning balance of almost $13.9 million if you add the two, the 12.1 and the 1.8 together. Then we used $1.5 million to reduce the tax rate in '24. We had transferred $525,000 from general fund to capital projects, and we rolled forward some funding into the next year of $875,000, primarily reserved for salaries and contracts that we still need to do retro payments for. So we ended up with an unreserved fund balance of $11.6 million in the general fund. This next slide goes through our enterprise fund, where we have the rink and golf combined into the recreation enterprise, and then separately the water and sewer enterprise. On the skating rink side, we generated $854,000 in revenue against $924,000 in expense. So we had an operating loss of almost $70,000, added to a loan payment of $80,000, so we were short about $150,000. Adding that to our beginning retained earnings, which was in the negative, puts us in a negative position in the skating rink of $239,000. On the golf course side, we have better news where the revenues came in over $2 million. That's the first time since we've run the golf course. Expenses at 1.7 for a gross profit of $311,000. Paying back the loan from the Community Development Authority of $100,000. So we add to our beginning fund balance to create a fund balance just for the golf course alone of $1.4 million, $1.491 million. Adding the two together, the fund balance totals $1.251 million, and that's the amount certified by the Department of Revenue that we can use during the course of the year to fund any activities from retained earnings in that enterprise. Moving on to the water and sewer fund, we generated $25.1 million in revenue against $22.3 million in expense. We had a transfer from general fund that the state made us put on our tax rate last year. So our total gross profit was $3.4 million against our bond and loan payments debt service of $1.7. So we ended up with a positive retained earnings certified by the Department of Revenue at $1,084,000. Again, that can be used during the course of the year for projects or transfer for shortages within that enterprise. This next slide is a final analysis of the ARPA funding. We were awarded a little over $21 million in ARPA funds. During the course of the years, we used $18.1 million in revenue replacements, $662,000 as part of the COVID health response and our security. Then we had a number of projects that totaled about $1.2 million, with leaving us a balance as of today of $1,116,152.96. We're proposing that we're going to use $1.1 million against our operating budget as revenue replacement for the FY25 budget, and we'll tie up the remainder with a vote to utilize the balance of $16,000 towards water main projects, particularly the Lowell Street project that's upcoming. That way, we'll have all of our ARPA money tied up and encumbered prior to the December 31st, 2024 deadline. The financial update for the reserves, I had a call from Councilor Turco, and he pointed out a couple of problems, and I submitted for an updated sheet for this page 5. I'm going to go through the first column here. The 2024 amount that was certified by the Department of Revenue was $10.1 million. We ended up, for a variety of items, utilizing or reducing that up by $3.4 million. So we ended up at June 30th with $6.7 million in free cash. When we went through the certification process, the Department of Revenue recalculated our free cash, added back 2.7, so our certified free cash for FY25 was $9.489 million. We're proposing tonight to use $1 million from that reserve to bring it down to $8.489 million. I anticipate, through a variety of coverages that we'll need through the year, maybe a 1.5 in snow and ice if it's a bad year, miscellaneous projects of $300,000, and then for next year's tax rate, we'll be using at least $1.5 million. That would bring us down to about $5.2 million in free cash after those usage. Traditionally, we use about $3.5 million, so that's right in line. That's $3.3 million. And at last year's budget or tax classification meeting, we were at $5.3 million. So even though we used almost $3.5 million during the course of the year, we're about the same position projected going forward. Now, the stabilization column shows that we paid back our loan that we had during our fire of the water treatment plant that we borrowed. That's $125,000. There was $266,000 in investment interest, which is about 7 to 8%, which was very good because of the good markets this year. So we ended up at $3.6 million. We'll have another payback for that loan. That'll get us at $3.8 million. And then I put in the vote that we just did recently of $150,000 from stabilization. But eventually, probably before the end of the year, we're going to take money that was already voted out of stabilization, and I'll bring forth a transfer from the retained earnings of the water enterprise to refund the money back to stabilization. And there was 2 votes. There was one in 2023 for $250,000, and then the one most recently for $150,000. That would bring us at about $4 million in stabilization. Combined with stabilization and free cash after tonight's meeting, we'll be at about 12.2. And then with our projections going throughout the course of this fiscal year, we could be as low as 9.2 million. Last year at this time, we were projecting 8.8. Now we're going to get into the property values for this year. Values increased by $622.9 million, or 5.5%, and this is for calendar year 2023. We had a total for fiscal 24 of 11.3 billion. That went up to 12 billion, or the $622 million increase. This slide looks at the history of our increases over the past 5 years. Since 2020, nearly 42%. We've had a nearly 42% increase in value. And it's broken out. Residential's increased 46.7%, commercial 12.5%, industrial 50.3%, and personal property 41.6%. Overall, CIP's increased 21.4% for this 5-year period, which is up from last year's 5-year period of 19.9%. So it was very stable growth, particularly in the commercial sector. The next slide shows the breakout of the residential value increase. It increased by $566 million, or 6% overall. And if I go right down the list, single families went up 6%, condos 8.3%, 2 and 3 families almost 3%, multifamily at 6%, vacant land down slightly, and then other mixed use at 6.6%. Few highlights that the number of sales are down this year, but the prices are still very high, as the mayor alluded to. Average sale price was $668,000 for a single family and $728,000 for a 2-family. Again, with apartments, costs or values increasing due to the increasing rents and almost full occupancy throughout the city. This slide looks at the CIP values. Commercial values have increased $56 million, or almost 3%. A couple of these drivers in this area were warehouse space and the hotel values because of the high occupancy and revenues coming in from all the hotels. Commercial increased 2.3%, industrial 3.1%, and then personal property at 7.3%. For a total increase in CIP of 2.9%, and overall, all of our values increased 5.5%. This slide is our average residential value that the mayor talked about is now at $614,700. That's an increase of $32,900 from prior year. For this 5-year period, the increase in value is 45.7%, or almost $200,000 for the average residential value. This slide shows our average CIP values, commercial values. They have increased $44,500. That's an increase of a little over $300,000 since 2020, or 19.9%. Very steady growth in the commercial values. And this year's average is $1.8 million. Our new growth, these are new tax dollars brought on the tax rolls. This year is $1.1 million, 47.3% from commercial, 52.7% for residential. New growth continues to average over $1.1 million a year. You can see that the bottom to right column, 1.180 is our average over this period of time. This year we come in at 1.1, and as the mayor talked about earlier, we generated $582,000 of new tax dollars from residential and $521 from commercial, almost an even split. And it's very solid in terms of continued growth year to year, which helps us increase the amount of tax levy that we can use. This next slide is our budget data. If you look at the middle column for FY25, our budget original budget is $191.3 million. Our Essex Tech's budget is $5.9 million. State and county assessments, $5.4 million. And this year, our abatements increased from $500,000 to $800,000. We don't have the amount to be raised as we did last year of $574,000 for the water. So that's a reduction of $274,000. One of the reasons why we're increasing the $800,000 is we're voting for some more exemptions for taxpayers. And in addition to that, there's a number of properties that are in tax title that have liens on them that the city will be taking, and will have to utilize abatements in order to pay off the money. So what actually will happen is we'll be raising the money and paying ourselves back. In order to fund this $203,568,000, there's several sources of revenue. Our property tax levy will increase to $130.5 million. Our local receipts at 21.9, state aid at 48. Indirect costs funded by the enterprise fund, and these are HR and finance and a number of operations within the city that help with these enterprises, and we charge back, and this benefits the general fund at 72.9. ARPA, we're going to use our last ARPA amount at 1.1 million, and then other available resources combined at 1.88 million. We're going to use $1 million from free cash, 162,000 from the parking fund, 550,000 from health trust, and 176,000 from CAF revolving to balance out the 203,568,000. Part of the funding sources is our local receipts, our local revenues, and our budget plan for FY25. We remain status quo based on what we received in FY 2024 for the most part. A couple of areas to note: payment in lieu of taxes is increased to $1,020,000, primarily due to an increase in contribution from PMLP and a new payment in lieu of taxes from the Peaker plant through MWIC. Our landfill revenues are going to be down at $300,000 because we are no longer have the landfill operation operating, but we do have the scale house fees that generally run around $300,000. In addition, if you look at the license and permits, we came in very high this year at $3.5 million. Generally, we're around 2.4, 2.5, so I had to move that down to be in line to what we expect will happen during the course of FY25. Another thing to note is interest income. We did very well last year with the good market and higher rates. We came in at $625,000 compared to $300,000 the year before, but I scaled it back a little bit to $550,000 because of the Fed dropping some rates and just not getting quite the yields that we had been getting. In addition, we've added at the bottom the ARPA revenue replacement 1.1, custodial fees, cable fees, these were here last year. Tilly's is a new source of revenue. We've added $150,000 for, and we've upped the museum fees to $300,000 for a total of $23,018,000. This next slide looks at state aid. This year, the net state aid increases by $1.4 million. This compares to $4.5 million last year and $8 million the year before. So now that the COVID funds have run dry at the state level, we're probably going to expect to see $1 million, $1.5 million in that range of state aid, which really puts more of a burden on the taxpayers now that we're not getting as much contribution or increased contribution from the state. This next slide shows the impact of tax classification, what we're here for tonight, to move the commercial factor to 1.175. So on the left-hand side of the chart, before classification, our $130.5 million tax levy would have $109 million of the levy shared by the residents and $21.5 million shared by the commercial. With this 175% shift, that would reduce the residential levy to $92.8 million and increase the CIP levy to $37.6 million. So this is a $16.1 million shift, which helps residential taxpayers reduce their bill from what could have been $6,682 to $5,692. It's about $1,000 savings. At the same time, the commercial property would, on average, have a $14,932 increase based on the classification factor. This chart looks at the history of our tax rates. This year, our proposed residential rate would be $9.26 and our commercial rate at $19.02. The tax rate has trended down in the past years, from 10.74 to $9.26. This year it's stabilized a little bit and has a slight increase. This slide is our look at what the annual tax bills are for average residential tax bill. This year it will increase $386.56 or 7.3%. Since 2020, we've increased residential tax bills 25.7%. However, the values have increased 46.7%. But because of the tax classification and being able to move some of the burden onto the businesses, we're able to mitigate the impact from 46% down to 25% to residential. By the same token, the average annual tax bills for commercial will increase $1,100, $186. Looking at the chart, you can see below that we are having a steady climb back, increasing the amount of the average tax bill for commercial taxpayers. Yet, we're still just below what we were 5 years ago in 2020. This chart breaks out the strata of the different effects of the tax change. 5.2% of residents' tax bills will decrease. 32.4% will increase $250 or less. On the commercial side, we only have less than 0.5% seeing a decrease, 0.39%. Last year, there was 14.4% of commercial properties had a decrease. So the commercial is, again, helping to support residential, the huge residential value increases. And as the mayor talked about earlier, looking at Essex County in total, the fourth column from the right is the annual change in tax bill. And this is mostly 2024. There was only 2 reporting in when I pulled the information from the DOR, Topsfield and the Hunt. Everything else is from the prior year. And we have the average for Essex County at $411 increase. And we're projecting a single-family tax bill for FY25 to be $420. So that's right at the same level as the 2024 average for Essex County. So I'm confident that we will be below the average for Essex County when all of the 2025 information is posted. Another thing to point out is in the far right column is the excess levy capacity. That's the amount of funds that we have not taxed. And the Peabody is at $14.9 million. So we could have taxed $14.9 million more this year without a 2.5 override. So in summary, on the last page, our total values of $12 billion created an allowable tax levy of $145,499,000. Our levy reserve, what we're not going to tax, is $14.9 million. Our actual levy will be $130,526,000, utilizing a classification factor of 1.75. Our residential rate will be $9.26, and our commercial rate will be $19.02.
Thank you for that. There's no one in the auditorium for the public. Is there anyone online on Zoom that would like to speak? No. Okay, with that, I will turn it over to the counselors. Counselor Gamache.
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, page 13, it says total sources of revenue. What's the health trust? It's for $550,000.
Yes, we have an account where we receive reimbursements from the electric light plant, and we also have had it traditionally when we were self-insured, and it generates some passive income from investment, and we also utilize that to pay off some Medicaid care payments for retirees that goes back a number of years. But that's what it is.
Okay, thank you. And just another question on page 14. It shows that fiscal 2024 for Medicaid reimbursements at $805,000, and we're projecting for this year $700,000. Is that a normal decrease, or where's that actually?
Well, this is a fluctuating item. You can see the year before it was $659,000, and the school processes all of this data. So I have to be a little bit conservative in this area because I don't want to get wild high on it and be over.
And another question is the landfill revenues. Is that because Covanta left?
We shut down. We were operating before. We were taking in soils. We shut that down, but we're still utilizing the scale house. So we will be getting some funding, but not like we were getting before.
Was that landfill revenue from Salem? Was that the ash, whatever materials were coming in from the SESD?
We were bringing in soils from a variety of construction sites, and that just ended at the beginning of this fiscal year. So right now we're not taking any of that kind of revenue in, but we do get like $1.50 a ton for scale fees.
And just one further one, licenses and permit fees. That went from actual of 3.56. I know that it went up considerably from, it seems like 2021, it was 2.2, 22 actual was 3.8, then it went back down to 2.3 in 23, then it went up to 3.5 in 24, and now we're back to 2.5. Is this got to do with the economy, or does this have to do with just your basic permit fees? Construction.
It's more based on projects. So we've had a lot of those large residential projects in the past couple of years, and the permits hit, and then we generate all this revenue for permit fees, and then it kind of wanes, and then we get more projects. So it's traditionally we're around that 2.5 million mark, not up in the threes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Actually, just to jump in on one item, Councilor, to add to Mr. Gingras' comments regarding the landfill. So we were able to, a couple of years ago, get a permit from the DEP to bring in some material to fill a gap in the swales, to not to get too deeply into it, but there was some availability to bring in. That was utilized, and that's why we were able to get a little bit of a bump for a couple of years. We're still hoping, and I have a meeting actually later this week with SESD representatives to see if there's some other opportunities for us. Hoping that we can continue to utilize the landfill in a positive way and bring some more revenue in. We're going to be conservative this year, because I don't think we won't be able to work something out for this year and get the permits, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to bring that around and make some more revenue going forward. But we do get the Covanta revenue that comes in, so that gives us a baseline, but we're hoping that we're able to add to that. And like I said, I have a meeting coming up where we're hoping to work out a further agreement. I'll keep everybody updated.
Thank you. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. You can come back to me at the end. I just, I know you made some soft comments there to the clerk about calling for public comments. I want the record to properly reflect that you did make a robust call for public input, because it is a public hearing. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be my request. Thank you.
Councilor, are you just asking me to ask for public comment again?
Yes, from my perspective, it seemed like there was a dialogue between you and the clerk. I couldn't really hear it, so if I couldn't hear it, I'm concerned that the transcript won't properly show that the public heard it. And
Okay.
Thank you.
We don't have any members of the public in the auditorium with us. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to comment? There's no one on Zoom, so we'll continue with council comment. Thank you. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see that billboards are down 100,000, Mr. Gingrich. Is there any reason for that? We typically average 500,000 a year. It's down 100,000.
No, we're running right around 400,000 in that line item. There was one or two that came offline from previous years. So I put in exactly what we collected in the previous year.
Okay, so the year prior to that, though, and typically before that, it was always at about 500,000. Two are offline. Are they offline permanently?
As far as I know, yeah.
Councilor Gamache.
If I may, we've lost two billboards. One that was on Route 95, located at 265 Newbury Street, and that was taken down, I believe, 2 years ago, maybe 3. And we lost the one at the subway on Lowell Street, which we mandated that they take that down. So we're down 2 since the original.
Right, but the subway one's been gone for 12 years or so.
Has it been that long?
Yes, it has. So
All right.
that doesn't account for
Well, we
it.
lost one also on Route 1 behind the mobile home park. I don't know when it came down, but those are the two that I'm aware of that's come down.
Within the last 2 years, that one? Yeah, I don't,
There were, in the past couple of years, 2 taken down. I can get that information for you. And then there's one that's in arrears 2 years that I've been going after, and I have an agreement with a company that's leasing from the company who owns the billboard. They're paying me rent now versus paying the company that they're leasing the billboard from to make up those arrears.
can you share that information with us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate that. And a little off topic, if I may, Madam President, through you to Councilor Gamache, since we're talking about removing billboards, I think you still have 2 rusted out ones that have been up since before we entered into the billboard business. So if we could have the property owner or who's ever responsible for those remove them because they're ugly.
If I may, one of them in question is located at 258 Newbury Street, and that one was just abandoned by the company, and it's on the guy's. He's looking to do something with it. He may bring it back to life. I don't know. The other one I'm not familiar with.
You and I can go for coffee. I'll show you it. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Gamache. And if I may continue, thank you, Madam President. Through you to the mayor, you mentioned that there were 2 pilot payment in lieu of taxes increases, one the light plant and one, I forgot already, but that's good news. And I'm wondering, have you had any interaction or have you approached, since given the economy, any of the other, which we have many, a lot of hospitals in the city, especially up in the shopping center, the mall area, that receive payment in lieu of taxes. Have you been able to approach or broach that? Because in times like this, moving forward, we need more people to do what the light plant and, remind me, who was the other one, Mayor? The Pica plant. We need more to step up. It doesn't necessarily need to be a permanent thing moving forward, but for them to put forward some goodwill and offer the taxpayers a break, because a lot of them do have very generous deals with payment in lieu of taxes. So I don't know if you've had any of those discussions, or if you could, moving forward, that's something that I would like to see.
Thank you, Council. I do have a meeting scheduled, I can't remember if it's next week or the week after, before Christmas, with Leahy, and that's one of the topics is the pilot. So I'm hoping to have some good news on that, but your point is correct and well made. I was glad and pleased that PMLP increased their pilot a bit for us, but yeah, I'd like to see that with others as well.
Thank you. And they are taking a lead to show that it can be done and it's the right thing to do. And maybe that could be an example to some of these other people that you're going to meet with. And I hope that you throw out a wide net on this and see what you can do, Mayor. I appreciate that. On page 15, I see that the veterans benefits, are we getting less state aid? We got 40%, it's down 40% from 2021. It's down 26% just from last year. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, those is purely the numbers that came off of the state funding sheet.
So that's less state aid for our veterans from the state of Massachusetts for the last
Couple of years, yeah.
the last few years at a downward spiral, I might add. That's despicable. Thank you for the clarification on that. And lastly, I have questions regarding future, the leases that we have with the school administration building and the Children's Museum, how many more years are we into those leases?
So the museum, we are completing or in the tail end of year 2 of an original 5-year term, and then we have 5-year options after that. The property across the street is 27 Lowell Street. That's on a year-to-year. We wanted flexibility with the hopes to move that to either the current police station or as part of the high school. So I wanted flexibility with that lease, and we go year to year.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad that you are focusing on those and have a plan to get us out of those leases. Those are, is not the business we should be in. I know that it was a decision made at a time where some felt it was necessary, but I think that moving forward, we need a plan to, as I can see you're focusing on, to kind of get out of that situation, out from under that situation. Thank you.
Councilor Melville.
Thank you. And just as a point of information, just on that veteran, I think that's the Chapter 115 reimbursement. So it's based on the requests. So if the requests are down, that fluctuates. And I think we get, what's it, 75%? So we don't get 100% back, but it's 75. And that's like emergency aid on that end. Just a point of information on that. I just had a question on just regarding just when we were talking about the licenses and fees, permit fees. So are you judging that number based off of any, is there like a time lapse leading up to when they actually apply and the fee permits would hit? Or is that just based off of, because it seems like I mean, that's a pretty substantial difference between this year and that year. Do we know leading up to like last year that we were going to see 3 million something versus this year seeing 2 point something?
It's kind of a moving target, and it's hard to judge what it's going to be. Usually mid-year, I'll take a look at it and see where it's trending, because like I said earlier, you could have a number of larger projects that the permits hit, or other ones that are in a pipeline that they haven't hit, and then you have a lot of small, renovations and things. So there's really no way to project it. I'm just using the traditional trends that it maxes out at an average year at about 2.5 million.
And we increased the fees, last year, the year before?
They were increased a number of years ago.
I thought it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was more than a couple.
The building fees, I thought we did 2 or 3 years ago. But
yeah, it was.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time we looked at some of the other licensing fees? Just curious. The other licensing fees, I know some of them. I'm just curious, when was the last time those were reviewed? No idea. All right, maybe it's just curious based on that, but that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Manning Martin, if you're just addressing something that Councilor Melville said.
Yes, please. Thank you. To follow up on your clarification on the veterans reimbursements, you say, so what would explain then, because that we're down 40% in applications? Are you suggesting that we were more aggressive in filling out applications 2 to 3 years ago than we are now? Because I certainly don't think that we have less of a need for our veterans.
Councilor Melville.
No, not at all. Just a point of information, Counselor. For the Chapter 115, it's one of those issues that I've had a problem with, that we only get 75%, because you're basically punishing communities that are active in assisting the vets. So it really should be 100%. So ultimately, what you're doing is saying, it's like, so for example, City of Peabody is active in supporting, veterans that are having issues. It's supposed to be emergency money. And what you find statewide is the cities and towns that are lax and don't help ultimately spend very little money on it. But in Peabody, because we're active, we end up spending more than maybe the less active communities, but we only get 75% reimbursement versus the 100%. So that's usually what the issue is.
Okay, but in just the issue of what we're talking about here, that's in front of us here, I don't know how that offers an explanation for going down 40% from 2021. Other communities aren't involved in our reimbursement.
Yeah, I mean, just my view on this, the easiest way to solve this is we can ask the veterans agent, you know, has he seen a decrease in the request for aid? Because it's based on the application and how much aid the individual gets. And the problem is that it makes it very difficult for communities to budget this because you don't know, are you going to see 10, 12 veterans run into a problem in the future fiscal year. So it's very difficult to budget. So in the veteran community, this has been like one of the things that gets brought up pretty regularly because the reimbursement is only 75%. So the cities and towns are on the hook for 25%, and then you don't know how long that particular individual will need that type of aid. So I'd be happy to find out if there is a drop-off. That'd be good. I mean, that's positive news, but, you know, we can find out.
That's kind of my point. It would be positive news, but I just don't see that as realistic. There's such a need out there. I just can't explain for why there'd be such a drop. So if it's in lack of applications, I think we need to be more aggressive and find out what we're not applying for and why that number has decreased. But thank you for your assistance in understanding that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to Mr. Gingrich. Same two questions I started with last year. High school stabilization fund. Should we just scrap that at this point? You know, I was hopeful to kind of have $500,000 set aside by the time this project begins. I know it's minuscule in the whole scheme of things, but it's $500,000 less that we have to worry about 5 years down the road. But I haven't seen any action.
Well, that was on the top of my mind recently, and
You said that. That was a response last year.
No. We just got the free cash certified last week, and once we get free cash certified, I was going to work with the mayor and come up with some amount to start funding that from free cash. No, I said that at a budget hearing, but no, we didn't have free cash after June 30th, so we really couldn't do anything. Now we have 8.4.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I watched the tax classification meeting from last year, and it was my first question. And anyway, well, I'll digress. Hopefully, we move forward with something on it. Second question, through you to the mayor, Madam President. Mayor, you had that vacant land ordinance on there. Then I think you wound up with the vacant land ordinance that you had presented to us at some point, and I think you withdrew it from legal. I don't think it's in legal anymore. It is. Oh, maybe Council Rossignol says it is. And the reason I ask is because I see vacant land was down 1.2%. So it's almost like these people that refuse to develop these vacant parcels are actually benefiting. Their tax increase went down 1.2% from last year, where I think your intention was to actually try to motivate them into developing these parcels and these properties or upkeeping them. You know, specifically King Street is one that we could likely, I don't know what the fines that we can present with that vacant land ordinance, but I'd like to see it move forward if you still have that plan to do so.
Yes, and I apologize for that. Councilor Rossignol has reached out to me on a couple of occasions to get that on there, and I've delayed just because there was other items going on. But yeah, I need to bring that forward, and I'll talk to you, Councilor, on that. That would give us, some ability to go after some of those groups. And quite frankly, we need to do a better job over at we have 70 Endicott Street, and we need to get that cleaned up a little bit.
Thank you. And Mayor, while I have you, The abatement, you had mentioned an abatement request. I think it may be budget time from Brooksby. How do we make out with that? Did they get an abatement or?
Hi, good evening. Yes, Brooksby did receive a slight abatement in their real estate property taxes for last year. And their
Okay.
value, we agreed to the value for this year at $180 million, I believe.
Thank you. Do you anticipate, for a further request for abatements from either the mall or Brooksby or anybody?
No big taxpayers. I don't anticipate anything.
Okay.
From those two specifically anyways.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Mike, the other thing that you mentioned at the beginning of tax classification last year was that you had just gotten a new bond rating in December of last year. Are we still at AA3 for the bond? Okay. And moving on to the budget, I'll be quick because I think the mayor already answered it up front. So if you look at, let me get to the correct page first. If you look at page 14, the projected local revenues, and Councilman Gamache and Council Manning touched on some of them, but if you go back to budget time in in June, these numbers obviously have drastically changed from what was presented to us in June. For instance, the hotel taxes, when presented in June, was 2.2 million, and now you're projecting 2,380,000. So an increase of 180,000 in the last 6 months. Same with meals tax. You presented 1,885, and you have $15,000. Payment in lieu of taxes at budget was projected at 1,110,000. It's actually down $90,000 from what you presented in June. Why the decrease in that one?
All right, so I'll address your first couple with the hotel and meals.
Yep.
If you look at the actual column, which is the second column from the right, that's what the amounts actually came in at. During budget, that's a projection partway through the year. So it actually came in at 2.385, so I put in for 2.38 for the hotel, same with the meals. Now, as far as the you said rec revenue?
No, so back to that, Mike. So in fiscal 2024 actual, you have 2,385,000,
Yeah.
right? But when you presented that number to us in the budget, you presented 2.2 million, and that number has since changed, and you upped it to closer to match the 2024. So what caused that? Was that reimbursement from the state for the taxes?
Yeah, the last quarter came in, and I didn't have the last quarter in during the budget cycle.
All right, so that would be the same, but now, to the decrease in payment in lieu of taxes, that should be kind of a steady number that we know, right? Why would it go down $90,000 from what was presented to us?
You're talking the rec revenue, right?
Am I looking at the right line? No, I have payment in lieu of taxes that you presented us with 1,110,000 in June, but now you have it at 1,020,000.
Yeah, I think I refined the number to what the actual payment was going to be. I finally got the documentation.
Oh, okay, we didn't know at that point what?
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure.
Okay, and rental fees, let me just double check and make sure I have them all. So ultimately, it's the bottom line number that I'm going to ask about. So again, in the budget, you had presented in June that this total number at the bottom of page 14 was going to be 21,425,000, which is now projected to be 23 million, a $1.6 million increase in projected revenues from June. I mean, that's a substantial amount. You know, and I apologize. I know you probably don't have your budget book in front of you, but I did verify the number. There you go. So
the subtotal of local revenues in the budget was listed at, like I said, 21.4, and you now have it projected at 23.018.
I didn't have the ARPA in that. I broke out ARPA separately.
That 1.1 million?
You're right.
Okay, so that's, okay, that explains the difference. Okay, I was trying to compare apples to
Yeah.
apples from what was presented to us, and this is kind of set up a bit differently than what the budget was. So I guess it kind of answers my next question. I was thinking if we were up 1.6 million, and I understood that the mayor mentioned that he was going to reduce the burden on he was going to reduce the 1.5 million to 1, so that made up for $500,000 of it. I was wondering why we chose to not use some of those revenues, but I guess you've answered my question with the million. So I'll move on. If you go to the previous page, for page 13, the mayor already explained why he went from 1.5 million down to 1 million for free cash. But again, in the budget proposal to us in June, you proposed that you were going to use 825,000 from the health trust. Instead, you used 550,000 from the health trust. $275,000 difference. Parking meter was right on what you said in June. And the only other difference was school revolving. You said you were going to take out 225,000, and you wound up taking out 176,000. So ultimately, my question with all of this, to get through this long process, is that I understand that the savings mechanism, Mayor, you're looking forward to next year, but was there any thought at like maybe using some of this to cut the tax rate a bit further? Like if we had used more of the health trust and more of the school revolving as we anticipated in June, we likely would have been able to reduce the tax burden a little bit more, whether it be $20, I don't know, but it just, and I also understand your methodology where you're expecting these high increases in 26, so it makes sense to save some of these. So it's a quandary that I just, did you weigh that out back and forth on whether we should lessen the burden this year in hopes that...
Can I give you a little comment?
I'm sorry, Mike?
Can I give a comment?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. I
right.
talk too much.
Sorry. So as far as the health trust goes, at the budget time, I really wasn't aware of this 18% increase in retiree health insurance, which starts January 1. And that's going to translate to around $400,000 or $500,000. So I kind of pulled back from that for that purpose, because we're going to need to fund this unanticipated increase. And also to not create a big hole for next year, as the mayor had already talked about. If we use 800,000 this year, we need to use 800,000 next year, and I don't think it'll be there, that kind of money. And then on the cafeteria revolving, there was a little piece in addition to this 176 of admin that we were going to charge back. We haven't put that in place yet, and I'm not exactly sure. Sometime after the first of the year, we're going to put that position in place, and then we could be doing it, but I wasn't really sure of the timing, which translated into the amount.
Thank you. Is that the assistant auditor position
Yep.
for the schools? Okay. And that hasn't been filled yet? So,
No, we haven't completed that. No.
okay, that explains that. And my last question, just a correction on late one, where you added return grant match at the bottom left of the page, 7/13/2023 vote. That date makes sense, and we did in fact vote on that date. But on the next line, return grant match 7/13/2024, that's a Sunday, so I don't know what that date's supposed to be. I just wanted to correct it for the record. And
Yeah, it's probably the week after.
okay, thank you. That's all.
Any other counselors? Counselor Higgins?
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to Mr. Gingras, I just wanted to I'd like Mr. Gingras to add some comment. I see we've added some free cash in order to help reduce the burden on the residents for taxes. Regarding the CIP factor, could you just add a little explanation of the 175 or the 1.75 factor? Is that the maximum allowable?
Yes, that's the max. We've been there for the last 4 or 5 years, yeah.
Okay, I think that's important. As we noticed in some of the literature here, we have about, I noticed 32.4% will see an increase of 250 or less. However, 67% of our residents will see an increase of 250 or more. And we're going to have an average of 386 or so. Second question, also on page 21, just out of curiosity, I see that we rank 30th, but we have 34 communities on this list we have 33 listed out of 34. I was just curious as to why Lawrence was omitted from this table.
I didn't know Lawrence was in Essex County. To be honest with you, I've just been using the same cities and towns every year.
Okay, fair enough. I don't think it actually changes much. However, it is impressive looking at the excess levy capacity from 2024, and we were at 18. We're going to drop that excess levy capacity by about 4 million, apparently. So I have a question as to what kind of impact can we expect with that hit for our bond rating, and what is our current bond rating?
Current bond rating through Moody's is AA3, and we'll be going out either in the spring or in early summer to borrow some more money, and it'll have an impact, but I think it's still significant. So I think it's going to still help us, because that's one of the things they look at, that we have the ability to increase our tax levy without as Proposition 2.5 override.
Thank you.
Councilor Daigle?
Thank you, Madam President. My questions mostly have been answered. I have one, I think, quick one to the mayor or Mr. Gingras. Back to our favorite page 14. We're projecting that Tilly's Farm is bringing in some revenue for the first time of $150K. I'm going to guess that we've paid off the property, so now we can make a little money. Is that the reason?
They've been generating 300,000 or 400,000 a year. And that, we've been utilizing some of that funding for repairs and upkeep and purchasing of supplies there. But there's a little extra, so that we should be able to start funding a piece of their operating budget with it. And so we're going to begin doing that. And I anticipate we'll increase that over time.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other counselors? No. Seeing none, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to the mayor and the finance team for great presentation and a lot of great questions from the council. In particular, Mr. Gingras, thanks for the FY24 close information and the final ARPA summary. We've seen a lot of these over the past few years. Mayor, you made a comment about that you were proud of how that was handled. I concur. I had a fear from the get-go on this that, you know, the risk existed to create a structural deficit by becoming over-dependent on that, but the way we've gradually weaned ourselves off it has avoided that problem, I think, completely. So I think well done on that front.
Thank you, Council.
Mr. Gingras, the last year at this hearing, we talked a bit about the money that needed to come from the general fund to pay back the water and sewer enterprise deficit. It was unclear after that as to whether or not we would be able to reverse that transaction when water and sewer had sufficient retained earnings to do that. I think at the time, you and the mayor thought that there was some timing issues there, and this was going to be a temporary phenomenon, and the water and sewer would be in a position to pay it back. But there are rules around these enterprise funds, which I think you're going to tell me that reversal is not allowable. But could you just confirm that that's the case?
Yes. When I went and reviewed and looked up the rules on the retained earnings for the enterprise, you're allowed to reimburse the general fund if it's money that was given by the general fund for capital projects, but not for operations. And within that rule is a 2-year window. So if you had given funds from the general fund to purchase a piece of equipment, you only have 2 years to pay back the general fund, or you can't do it.
So that is what it is at this point, right? There is no alternative approach. On slide 3, same slide where the enterprises are summarized there, can you just identify some of the key reasons why the skating rink was worse off for the fiscal 24 close than it was in the June projection? Because at budget time, we were anticipating that retained earnings would be end up at roughly 186, and it ended up at negative 186, and it ultimately ended up at close to 240. So could you just explain the delta in those numbers?
So looking back, there's a structural deficit built into the rink budget, where it was the budget itself was $940,000, and we brought in $850,000 of revenue. So there's $90,000 there right off the bat. And then we had some increases in salary and benefits of about $42,000 that wasn't totally in my projection. Repairs and maintenance was up $16,500, and water charges were more than I had projected by $6,500. So the combination there brought us over from what I originally projected during the budget time.
Thank you for that clarification. I mean, this one's gotten a lot of attention in the past 2 or 3 cycles, and I would imagine it's going to continue to get attention going forward when we have situations like this where it's gone from bad to a little bit worse. So I think we've got a lot of eyes on that now in terms of possible alternatives going into the future. That's probably a better conversation to have at budget time than it is today, but I guess maybe, Mayor, you could comment briefly on your, I guess all I'm looking for is that you are, in fact, this is on your radar screen.
Yes, very much so. Our lease expires in June of 2027. And we have a little bit of time, but we're, as a community, together, we're going to have to decide on the next steps for the rink and make a determination if it's something we want to continue or look at some other options, such as potentially partnering, bringing in a management company, things of that nature. So we are starting to have those discussions, and thankfully we've been able to meet with a couple of people who've given us some guidance and advice, and that that's going to have to continue. So, yeah, I think come budget time, we might be able to have a little better sense of where we're at, but June 27 is the date.
Right, and Mayor, if you're taking those actions now, by the time we get to that point, we should be in a great place, to make some well-informed decisions. Doesn't sound like it's going to be a last-minute thing.
No, I don't think so, and I anticipate that the state, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, DCR, who owns the property, they would be sending out an RFP, reaching out to us. So, yeah, we're getting a head start on it. It'll probably be here before we know it, but I think we're doing our due diligence now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Turco, great catch there on slide 5 that resulted in the update in late 1. Proud to have you on the Finance Committee there with that attention to detail. This is Mr. Gingras. Last year, the last couple of years, actually, you kind of dollarized the delta in what we had projected for the growth numbers in June versus what actually happened. So for residential, we had, I'm sorry, for the CIP, we had projected 1%, but in actuality, it came in at 2.91%, which, 3 times difference. So that was nowhere near what we saw last year, where that jumped up to like 10.8 maybe. It was close to 11%. But that shifted, that delta last year shifted like $3 million from residential over to just that delta in the projected percentage shifted nearly $3 million over to the commercial tax base. I'm looking at it this year, and I calculate it's about $700,000. I mean, at budget time, you gave us a slide that showed a range, and you picked something that was in the middle of the range to project the increases in the bill, the average tax bill. I guess two points here. One is to validate that 700,000 is in the ballpark. But number 2, just kind of just that we continue to take that kind of conservative approach when we're doing the budgets, because it is definitely helpful when we estimate conservatively like that, and we're pleasantly surprised versus taking the alternative approach.
To kind of outline your point a little bit further, during the budget session, the commercial tax levy was proposed at $37.184 million, and with this today, it's at $37,638. I don't know if I have that number in the presentation, but so it's that shift was about 300,000, yeah, this year.
The way I calculate, it's a little higher than that, but I'll defer to you for sure. I think the point is it's bigger than a bread box, and it pays off to kind of take a conservative approach at budget time, so we're not faced with the alternative scenario of being unpleasantly surprised. When I look at slide 21, it is, continues to be kind of an important view, I think, to see how Peabody's performing against peer communities. And, you know, it's one thing to have a affordable tax rate and corresponding tax bill, but it only matters if you're delivering the quality services that the citizens of Peabody deserve, and I think that we are. So I think that it does kind of demonstrate that Peabody continues to operate in an efficient manner relative to the peer group, and certainly hope we stay there. By now, usually we have some comparable information from, you know, we usually see an article in the paper about Salem or Beverly or Danvers by now. I haven't seen anything. I don't believe, Mayor, have you seen or heard from any of your fellow mayors about what's going on in their communities yet?
I haven't seen anything in the newspaper yet. No, I haven't.
So that's usually another interesting point of comparison to just kind of see where they're at. But I think that at the point that Mr. Gingras made about that the fiscal 24 average number was 411. I guess we'll say Les Lawrence, if that is. But yeah, I mean I think that's a point that Mike, that you made. That if that's last year's average at 411, that this year's very likely going to come in above that, and we'll be below that at the 420 number. His last point is on the increases in the Chapter 126 optional additional real estate exemptions. This is the fourth year that we have done these 10% increases, and I believe we are at the max at this point if these are approved tonight. Can you validate that?
Yes, that's correct. We've, as the values have gone up, we've tried to keep pace, but talking to Susan, this is it. We've reached the max on the exemptions allowed.
Okay, so we won't be seeing any more increases last year, but you know, I think it's important for people to know that we've gradually gotten to the point over a 4-year period of doing as much as we possibly can under Mass law for these real estate exemptions. Ms. Antonellis, would you mind, you've done this the last couple of years for us, would you mind just kind of, for folks that might be watching, running down what some of those are? It's not easy off of item C to identify exactly who these exemptions would apply to. So first request is to identify what some of them are, and second request is to identify where people can get additional information.
Certainly. There, on the city website, on the assessor's page, there is a listing of, summary listing of all the exemptions that are available that range from veterans with a service-connected disability of 10% or more, up to 100% veteran service-connected disability. There's an exemption for those over 65 with limited income and assets. There's exemptions available for widows with limited assets. There's exemptions for legally blind property owners. So if you go to the city website, on the assessor's page, has all that information along with the applications, or call our office. We'd be happy to help you.
Thank you very much. And I know Council Manning Martin has asked in a couple of previous sessions if that information is out there in any other beyond the website, is it on social media or any other
I
places where
believe
people-
that the Council on Aging puts that information in their newsletter as well. Other than that, it's on the city website. I don't think it's anywhere else.
I think Councilman Manning Martin has brought that up before. I think we have put it on PAT in the past. I'm not sure if it's still running. I'll have to check that. But we did put it on Peabody TV in the past as well, kind of like little notices. So let me check to see if that's being done still or...
That would be great, Mayor.
Yeah, we can put that back on. We have done that in the past, I know, but I don't know if it's still running, so I'll have to check that.
Yeah, I think I at least, well, I know, I'm assuming, I don't want to speak for Councilor Manning Martin, but since she's brought it up multiple times in the past, it's important to her. I think it's important to the council. It's definitely important to me that we get it out there as much as we can, because there's no point in offering these if people don't take advantage of them. And the deadline to file?
The deadline to file an exemption is April 1st.
Thank you for that. Madam President, I don't have any other questions or comments. If there are no other councilors that want to speak, I would be ready to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Are there any other councilors? Seeing none, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to close public hearing.
Councilors, you heard the motion to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to make a number of motions here, several of which are statutorily required, and they will all require roll call votes. I'm also going to identify the item that it is associated with the motion. So this first one is related to item C, the one that Ms. Antonellis just spoke about a moment ago. I would move to adopt the Chapter 126 of the Acts of 1988, optional additional real estate exemptions for 2025, as specified in the communication from His Honor the Mayor dated November 21st, 2024. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion on item C. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould. Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes?
Higgins.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. This next motion relates to item D in your packages. Move to approve the transfer request from unreserved fund balance free cash, account number 100-35909, an amount of $1 million to FY 2025 operating budget tax levy, account number 100-39201, in an amount of $1 million. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion on item D. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould. Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. This next motion relates to item E in your packages. Move to approve the transfer request, facility fees, account number 2400000344624, in an amount of $100,000, and cable fees, account number 2700000333017, in an amount of $100,000, and Tilly's revolving, account number 2600000355615, in an amount of $150,000, and parking meter, account number 2700000330001, in an amount of $162,308, and school lunch revolving, account number 2410000356606, in an amount of $176,000, and museum fees, account number 2600000355502, in an amount of $300,000, and employer health, account number 5000000321113, in an amount of $550,000, totaling $1,538,308, to FY 2025 budget sources, account number 1000000392001, in an amount of $1,538,308. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion on item E. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Gamache, McGinn,
Yes.
Gould, Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. This next motion relates to item F in your package. Move to approve transfer request, ARPA funding, account number 250-05900348122 2022-0393 to account number FY 2025 operating budget sources, account number 1000000392001, in an amount of $1.1 million. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion on item F. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville. Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould, Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. This next motion relates to the recommendation made in item B. Move to adopt residential factor of 0.852036 for fiscal 2025, which is a CIP of 175%. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
No.
Higgins.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-1.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. This next move to not grant a discount for open space. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin. Higgins.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to not adopt a residential exemption. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to not adopt a small commercial exemption. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould. Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. That completes all the motions relative to tax classification. We're going to deal with a few other matters this evening that need to be done for year end. Just remind all councilors that the tax classification allocation form needs to be signed this evening. I believe we have the form here. Does anybody have? We have the form here. Thank you. So please don't leave here without signing it. We are now going to go, Madam President, if we can, to item G on the agenda. And I'd ask Mr. Gingras to comment on that, please.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Mr. Gingras, if you could, we're moving on from tax classification to transfers. Item G, if you could speak on that, please.
Thank you. This is the annual set-asides for community preservation 10%, and I think we do various other percentages for open space, 2.5%, yep. This year is 172,183. For a total of 516,500. And this also is part of the tax rate, actually, because it goes, has to be submitted to the Department of Revenue.
Are there any counselors with questions or comments? Seeing none, Counselor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to approve the transfer request FY 2024 city collections, $1,049,047.07. FY 2024 state match, strike that, please. That's actually not the motion. I'm going to start over. Move to approve the transfer request from account number 270-0000-33011 in an amount of $516,551.91 Community Preservation Funds unreserved to account number 270-0000-33022 Historic Preservation Reserve Fund in an amount of $172,183.97 and 270-0000-33023 Community Housing Reserve Fund in an amount of $172,183.97 and account number 270-0000-33021 Open Space Reserve Fund in an amount of $172,183.97. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion relating to item G. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rossignol,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Daigle,
Yes.
Manning Martin, Higgins,
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Counselor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. And the related motion, there's some additional set-asides that are on that same memo, Mr. Gingras.
Again, these are additional set-asides we traditionally do every year with a 10% to open space and 2.5% additional to historic preservation and community housing reserve for a total of $258,000.
Any counselors have any questions? Seeing none, Counselor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to approve transfer from account number 270-0000-33011, Community Preservation Fund unreserved in an amount of $258,275.96 to account number 270-0000-33021, Open Space Reserve Fund in an amount of $172,183.98. Account number 270-0000-33022, Historic Preservation Reserve Fund in an amount of $43,045.99, and account number 270-0000-33023, Community Housing Reserve Fund in an amount of $43,045.99. So moved.
Counselors, you heard the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rossignol,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Counselor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to move on to item I. If Mr. Gingras could comment on that, please.
Or you do H,
Aye.
the water main? Oh,
The CPC admin.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is additional $10,000 reserve to cover admin costs for community preservation.
Councilors have any questions or comments on item I? Seeing none, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to approve transfer requests from account number 270-00003311, Community Preservation Act, unreserved fund balance in an amount of $10,000 to account number 270-0000333024, Community Preservation Act, administrative in an amount of $10,000. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol. Melville.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Moving to item H. Mr. Chingris could comment on that, please.
Thank you. As we talked about earlier, this is the remainder of the ARPA funding, $16,150.96, that we will encumber for water main replacement and to complete all of the ARPA funding that we received.
Councilors, are there any questions on item H? Seeing none, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. It's with great pleasure I make the final in my lifetime ARPA transfer request from ARPA funding account number 25005900348122022 0393 in an amount of $16,152.96 to water main replacement account number 25034812582412023 4403 in an amount of $16,152.96. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Daigle.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to go to item J at this time. If you could ask Mr. Gingras to comment.
Thhank you. This is a transfer of funds to Peabody Access Television for the third quarter receipt from Comcast for $191,996.
Do any councilors have any questions on item J? Seeing none, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to approve the transfer request, receipts reserve cable fund, account number 270-0000333017 in an amount of $191,996.50 to cable fund expense, account number 270-0000530007 in an amount of $191,996.57. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Melville. Yes. Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Daigle. Manning Martin.
Yes.
Higgins. Peach.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. If you could ask Mr. Gingras to speak to item K.
Again, this is a similar request as the previous one. It's quarter three's payment from RCN. Two parts, one's the fees and the other's the capital. And this will allow us to pay over to Peabody Access Television.
Councilors, are there any questions on item K? Seeing none, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. Move to approve the transfer request, quarter one, 2024, account number 270-0000333017, an amount of $13,718.02, and account number 270-0000333017, an amount of $3,100. $48.45. 2, cable fund expense, account number 270-000-53007, an amount of $13,718.02, and account number 270-000-53007, in an amount of $3,048.45. So moved.
Councilors, you heard the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilors Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville. Yes. Gamache.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Daigle. Yes. Manning Martin.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move to adjourn.
So moved. We're adjourned.
Thank you, council.